Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary Jonathan Ashworth is with me here in the studio this morning. Now, what are we going to do about this legislation, proposed legislation?
Well, I think this legislation is unworkable. The government are effectively saying to a nurse, a paramedic, a healthcare assistant, that if you exercise your right to industrial action, if you exercise your right to withdraw your labour because your pay is inadequate, then they're going to sack you. They're going to sack a nurse. This is the time when we can see on our television screens the desperate crisis the National Health Service is in, with millions on the waiting list, hundreds of thousands waiting beyond a year for treatment, people in trolleys in corridors in A&E departments, because we're so short of staff across the NHS, short of around 100,000 staff. And yet the government's proposal isn't to recruit more staff, isn't to resolve the disputes with fair pay settlements. The government's proposal is to sack nurses and paramedics.
It's a bit oversimplified. The government would say, I'm sure they'd say, no, that's not the case. We just want a basic level of service. We absolutely accept that some people will want to strike, and they will do that. That's their democratic right. But we see in Spain, we see in France that, you know, they do have a minimum level of service if there is a strike.
But these regimes don't work in other countries. And actually, there was a minimum level of service when nurses striked. Actually, when paramedics took action, I think they were responding to the Category 1 calls, the most serious of call-outs. But if you're a nurse, if you're a paramedic and you withdraw your labour under these government's proposals, the government are saying, we'll sack you. And I just don't think that is a sensible approach when we know our National Health Service is on its knees and people are waiting to get treatment, and our A&E departments are totally overwhelmed. I mean, the way in which you resolve this is obviously negotiation, and the negotiations have got to continue in a meaningful way. But why are people, whether it's the health service or other sectors, taking industrial action? It's because living standards have collapsed. That is a consequence of 12 years of poor economic growth, failing to make our economy more productive and prosperous. And one of the ways in which you raise living standards, grow your economy, is get more people back to work. And I'm putting forward new thinking, new reforms, new measures today to get more people into jobs, because it's good for them, but it grows our economy as well.
How do you get more people into jobs? What in your opinion, is the government doing wrong? You say they're disincentivising work. How are you going to fix it?
Well, they are, because you've got 1 million people out of work looking for a job, and then you've got hundreds of thousands of people who are out of work for reasons of sickness, or perhaps they've taken early retirement, but say they would return to work if given the right support and help. Yet they're getting no support and help at the moment under the Conservatives. I think that's a waste of their talents, a monumental waste of their talents. So I'm going to shift resources out of Whitehall and into local areas, whether it be Wigan or Bury or Leicester, so those areas can design the employment support schemes that are needed to help people with reskilling and retraining. But I'm also going to tackle the
That's not new, though, is it? I mean,
well, it's not happening under this government.
That's not reinventing the wheel.
Well, this government, it's not happening under this government. They think they're the roadblocks to reforms like that. But there's a second thing I'm going to do. We need to tackle the disincentives in the social security system, which at the moment, for many people, moving into work does not mean they are better off. It's not in their interests. We've got to tackle that, because at the moment people are trapped. There's a barrier stopping them moving into work. So I'm going to reform something called the work capability assessment regime. Yes, it's technical, but the social security system is technical.
Catchy title,
well, the social security system is complicated and technical, but these are the sorts of reforms that we can introduce which will smooth the journey into work for people who at the moment don't move into work, who say they would want to with the right help.
How are we feeling about MPs who've got 2 jobs?
Well, I've always argued that being a Member of Parliament and one's parliamentary duties, whether it's holding the government to account on the front bench or representing or fighting for different particular issues from the backbench, is a full-time job. And I think Parliament needs to come together and outlaw some of these second jobs. You'll always have MPs who are things like doctors and need to continue some of that working to maintain their professional qualifications. But I think generally there's got to be a better way of dealing with this.
Yeah, I mean, looking at yours, I know that you're happy with us to highlight it. You've declared £7,360 since 2019. That's a drop in the bucket, isn't it, compared to people like your colleague David Lammy, £313,000. Keir Starmer had said that he didn't, with notable exceptions, he didn't think that MPs should have second jobs. But he won't criticise David Lammy.
Well, can I just, in case your viewers
going back to yours,
misunderstand, and I know you're not trying to confuse the viewers, I know you're not doing that, but that's not money that's come to me. That's when I've been to a conference abroad and they've paid for the flight. and some of it
It's a gift that amounts to
well, it's to go to
£7,360.
it's to go to a work-related conference.
Yeah.
There are gifts in there.
Donations, earnings and gifts is what it's...
there are gifts in there. Leicester City Football Club, I'm the MP for Leicester, and Leicester City Football Club are in my patch. They took me to the FA Cup final when Leicester City beat Chelsea in the FA Cup. So there are gifts in there, but I don't have second earnings.
Yeah, that's
I
all
don't have second
illustrated,
earnings.
As far, if people go into our fancy tool, which I'm sure you have as well,
and it's very good.
Absolutely illustrates it. And in fact, if we see the second slide, we can just see that is illustrating exactly what you have just been telling us. There you go. You're happy with those figures?
Yeah.
Is that how much it was to go to the FA Cup final? Wow. It's a lot of money, isn't it?
Well, that's because you have to. They put you in the hospitality suite, and you obviously have to declare all of that.
OK, what about David Lammy? Let's go back to him. Should he be allowed to earn that sort of money from second jobs?
Well, he does a presenting programme, so he's, and it's a political job to present on the television.
More than that.
But if he was a government minister, he wouldn't be able to do that. But everything is declared. Everything is declared, and the reason we know about this is because he's quite rightly declared it all.
That's not my question, though. My question is, should he be allowed to do second jobs? Because you're saying, if you're an MP, that's the job that you should be doing.
Yeah, but he's doing. I think he's not sort of working for a bank or something. I think he's got a presenting programme on LBC, and I think some of the other is for books and speeches and things like that he's done, which is sort of related to the political work that he does.
So that's OK?
Well, it's in the rules, yeah.
But is it OK?
Well, it's in the rules, so yeah, it is, yeah.
OK. What about Keir Starmer saying that MPs, he's talking about Dale Vince, for example. He's one of the biggest donors to Just Stop Oil. Keir Starmer massively criticised what Just Stop Oil were doing. They were closing all the roads, weren't they? Really irritating. He said it was wrong and arrogant, but he's taking money from somebody called Dale Vince, who's also one of the biggest donors to Just Stop Oil.
But look at it from the other way.
It's confusing, though, isn't it?
Well, actually, no. I think that sends a clear message that we do not decide our policy positions based on who donates to the Labour Party, you see? I mean, you see what I mean? Because you're putting to me, how can he be criticising these people who've given us money? Well, actually, that's how it should be, because we make policies in the interests of the country, not in the interests of people who donate.
He doesn't support them. He doesn't support Just Stop Oil. He thinks what they were doing was irritating, wrong and arrogant, is what he said, to use his exact phraseology. But he's then also taking money from somebody who's massively supporting Just Stop Oil.
Well, if people want
so that's confusing at least.
Well, no, because if people want to donate to the Labour Party, they presumably are donating because they agree with the policies that I'm putting forward on getting people back to work, on the policies that Bridget Phillipson is putting forward on childcare, on the policies that Wes Streeting is putting forward on the future of the National Health Service. I think that shows you that people cannot buy our policies because you've got Keir Starmer disagreeing with somebody's position who has donated. I mean, I think that's a world of difference between the Conservative Party, whose financing is so murky, and the suspicion continues to linger that people who donate to the Conservatives...
Why do you say it's murky when we've illustrated how it's...
Because there's always suspicions that many of the firms who donate to the Tory party somehow have an impact on policy. You've got here an example of us disagreeing with somebody who's donated to our party. Yeah,
we tried to trace the money on, or follow the money on some of the big hitters in the Labour Party, and it was very difficult to try to find out who these companies were that were donating money to some of your big hitters.
Well, as I understand it, these are companies who are registered appropriately with the authorities, Companies House and so on, and have donated members of Parliament, so those members of Parliament can help fund staff in their office, research staff and so on. It's all within the rules, it's all transparent, it's all above board.
That's what the Tories would say as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, companies can donate to members of Parliament, and I think members of Parliament across all political parties have used these donations to fund staff, because we do get some staffing budget from Parliament, but there are MPs who need more research support and will therefore want to fundraise in order to fund that research support.
So we need to look again at the system, is what you're saying?
Well, I think. Well, first of all, Sky has brought together different media have brought together different databases, and that is a tremendous public service. But all this was publicly available information on different databases, and you've brought it together. That's really, really, really useful. But I think people do want the system to be improved. I think we do need to look at second jobs. If there are differences and question marks about the way in which donations are recorded. And we've got to be honest, by the way, I'm not an expert on all this sort of stuff.
Neither am I, but I'm
there are
interested
colleagues
to
in
know what
Parliament
you
who are really
think.
good on this sort of stuff and
there
really
are.
understand it. It's not my area of expertise.
And
But
Sam
anyway,
Coates has done an amazing piece of work on this front.
You know, if we need to improve the way in which donations are reported and make them more transparent, then of course Parliament should look at that. Of course Parliament should look at second jobs. That's why we've said we want to see more transparency, more integrity in Parliament. We want to resolve the way in which MPs can pursue second jobs and outlaw some second jobs, because we think being an MP should be full-time. So all of these things have to be looked at.
What would you do about Theresa May?
Have to be looked at.
£2.8 million. Woof.
Well, Theresa May can come on your programme and...
No, but what are you saying? You know, we have to look at it and outlaw some aspects of it. Would you outlaw former prime ministers being able to earn that sort of money?
I think in the end, you probably need
because they're public servants.
You probably need to get some sort of cross-party style committee of the House to look at all these issues, because there are different issues impacting different members of...
I understand, but my question is, do you think that it is reasonable that my viewers this morning would think £2.8 million?
It's a lot of money for speeches, isn't it? I mean, she makes speeches across the world and it's a lot of money. But look, this is why the House and Parliament needs to work on a cross-party basis to come up with a better system.
OK, it's great to talk to you. Very complicated, isn't it? It's a very complicated area. You say that the party and Parliament is looking at it. I know that Chris Bryant's looking at it in more detail as well, isn't he? And we will continue to update our data bank. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks a lot. Always appreciated.